Hello, Zeb Aurelios from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Inside the Force. Carabas. Gotta go, Hera's here.
It is a period of Star Wars mania, as new movies, comic books, novels, and TV shows populate the system. Fueled by their love and passion for the galaxy far, far away, two exceptional geeks tap into hundreds of holocrons in order to bring you the knowledge and insight of all things Star Wars. Come and join them as they go inside the Force.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Inside the Force. Dave Cottingham, and here with me today is Russell Johnson. What's up, Russ?
What's up, everybody? Hey, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, of course. Welcome back.
It's been a while.
It has been a long while.
It's been a little bit.
Yeah, Casey's on vacation this week. He's sitting on a beach somewhere. So I needed someone to talk to. And Russ is always willing. We've been trying to get you on this thing for a few weeks now. So,
this is my first real opening, so this was good.
Yeah.
Worked out well.
And there's a lot of Star Wars stuff going on. So, a lot to talk about.
There is. I hope I'm up to speed.
Yes. The biggest thing we want to talk about with this show is we'll run through some news. I got some novels things I want to talk about. The solo novel just dropped this past Tuesday. I can give a little quick review of Thrawn Alliances. And then we want to dive into, Russ's expertise, which is comics.
Is it really an expertise? I don't know about that.
I consider you an expert at comics.
I like to read them.
You have a long history of comics.
I do.
A lot longer than I do.
Yep.
And you're pretty, yeah. And obviously, you're pretty up to speed in what's been coming out in the Star Wars comic world. So
yeah, there's been a lot.
So first off, and I know you've dived a little bit into these audiobooks, haven't you? I
really haven't as much as I wanted to. I haven't really found the time to. Because once I get into a book, I'm gonna listen to it consistently, and I really don't have the time. I go from here to work and work at home, which is only like 20 minutes. So
right.
Yeah. But I just finished up the Thrawn miniseries. Which ties a little bit to the novel. So I've read kind of a comic book version of the novel.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I wish they were. I'm glad they did that. I just wish they did that more often. Because there's so many novels out now. Because I'm with you. I'm not a novel reader, as people have known me on the show, but I've done all the audiobooks. So, audiobook or comic, that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm hoping, because I read the comic too for Thrawn, and it's really good.
Mm-hmm. It was.
So the solo novel dropped this past Tuesday, day after Labor Day, which was a surprise, obviously, because the movie came out in May. It's taken this long for it to come out. Now, last week I was complaining because I went to go pre-order the book because I've got Audible, and you get credits every month or whatever, and I was ready to spend a credit to buy this thing. Well, it kept popping up that the audiobook wasn't available in our region. So I tweeted at Delray like, "Hey, what the heck is going on here?"
Right.
I didn't get a response, which is weird because they usually respond pretty fast. So maybe they did respond because all of a sudden, over the weekend, it became available. And so I was able to pre-order it, and I immediately started listening to it Tuesday driving to work. I'm already about 5 or 6 chapters in, and I gotta say, it is. I really love. I liked the movie. I really did like the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And there's already scenes in this book in the beginning and so forth that are just adding more to the story There's a little more on Corellia in the beginning. There's a little more on... Now, let me ask you this. How many times did you see Solo?
Twice.
Okay. Do you remember... This is hopefully not spoilers. I mean, a lot of people didn't see Solo, according to the box office. So if you hadn't seen it, I'm going to talk about it a little bit here. Do you remember when they cut to the scene, so after he leaves Corellia and they cut to the scene on Minbam, and he's, following Beckett, right, for the first time. Right. He meets Beckett. Do you remember how many crew members did Beckett have there?
Oh, geez. I thought he had quite a few. At least it seemed that way.
Okay. Well, because I only remember Val and Rio. But
and you're right about that. I talking about the comics. They dropped like a one shot called Star Wars Beckett. And that's all his crew is.
It's just the three of them.
Rio and Val. Yeah. Yep. It's just them. I mean, at least in this comic, that's the whole story is just of those three pulling, a heist and trying to get one over.
Yeah.
Doing what they always do. But it's like it's weird. It's like a 3-part comic that's all one story, all in one book. It's kind of bizarre. But it's just Val and Rio is all they have listed as like his crew.
So in the book, when remember that scene where Han sees them and says, the major told us to go that way. And he's like, well, who's the ranking officer? And he says, you are, sir. And then, Rio and Val are laughing at him like, oh, Captain Beckett,
Mm-hmm.
So in the book, there's 3 of them. Or there's Beckett and then 3 crew. And I can't remember the guy's name that they said. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, was that in the movie? I was like, I don't remember there being a 3rd guy. But what happens is that when he says, Val, you and Rio go this way, and then me and the kid are going to go this way.
Mm-hmm.
After that scene, and then they're walking in, the scene's kind of settled afterwards, and they're walking away, and that's when he kind of confronts him, and then they throw him in with Chewie. After they break off and fight, apparently this guy gets killed then. In the book, he gets killed.
All right.
So I guess maybe I don't know if they cut that scene out or if I don't know. But apparently there was a guy that got killed there. So, but I don't remember that in the movie. I was like, did that happen?
I don't remember that either.
Okay. So
no, I don't remember him dying.
I don't think it did happen. So either they didn't do it at all, or this is just an added part of the book that was different. I don't know. So anyway, so there's a couple scenes that are different and a couple scenes that are, not different, but just added to the length of the story. But it's really good. Of course, my favorite voice narrator, Mark Thompson, is the one narrating it, and he's phenomenal. He can do, and I'm telling you, like, the way he does voices, like, he sounds like Thaddeus Newton. He sounds like Woody Harrelson.
Really?
It is amazing, this guy, man. Sounds like Rio. I mean, it's incredible how now obviously he has, Val, it's pretty crazy because he normally, men doing women voices is tough.
Right.
But he pulls Val's accent off pretty good. Huh. So anyway, so I'm at that point. I'm on the part where they're trying to steal the train. They're on the train.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But the scene with with Chewbacca was really cool because you got a perspective of Chewbacca, like why he was there and what he was thinking about when they threw Han in there. So you get that side of it. So it was pretty neat. It's pretty neat. I'm enjoying it. I'm hoping. Now, do you know? We mentioned this on the show. Have you read any of the news where there's a cameo, a big cameo at the end of this book that wasn't in the movie?
I hadn't heard that.
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, tell me.
Oh, okay. So, well, we talked about it in the show last week. They in the book they show or they tell you where Enfys Nest takes the coaxium. When she gets it at the end of the movie, she takes it to Saul Gerrera.
Ah.
and standing there next to Saul is 11-year-old Jyn Erso.
Oh,
so it ties it in. Now, can you imagine if that was in the movie?
That would have been cool,
right?
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
I mean, I think the one thing they lacked in Solo a little bit was a little more connectivity. Even though Han is Han, obviously him and Chewie are connected, but just a little link of the movies together, I think would have been really cool. Like if you somehow could have got Forrest Whitaker to come back and and bring the young Jyn in there, I don't know, it would have been pretty mind blowing. I think
that would have been very cool.
So have you been on here since Solo has been out on the show?
Not since Solo's been out, no.
Oh, well then the floor is yours. What did you think of Solo?
I heard a lot of the negativity prior to seeing the movie. It's one of the Star Wars ones that I saw late. But when I did see it, I didn't see what the fuss was. I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was, it was entertaining. I guess I went into the thought process of, and we talked about this prior when the first trailer came out. I wasn't so sure about another actor playing Han and Lando and all that stuff. But if you just take it for what it is, they all do a great job of those characters. So I enjoyed the whole aspect of it. It did feel like a Han Solo adventure. More so than even though it's tied to rebellion and things like that, it's still very much just a Han adventure story.
Yeah.
For the most part, it ties in with all the stuff, but you get that whole sense of something I don't think you'd get with an individual Luke story, or it just felt very much that character throughout the whole film. So I had a good time with it. I didn't have a problem with it. I enjoyed how the storyline played out all the way to the end. There's still that double crossing going on. There's still that little bit of, well, I love you, but I will betray you type of thing. So I thought it was just well done. I saw foreshadowed some of the things coming, but all in all, yeah, I really enjoyed the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the negativity you're talking about, I think was a hangover from The Last Jedi. Because that's when things started really kind of tainted the fandom a little bit with a lot of negative voices.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
I don't think. But I'm a firm believer. I will never buy that there was that much negativity that drove fans away enough to kill the box office like it did. I just don't. I don't believe that, because I think there's so many more factors with releasing a movie in May that caused the box office to be bad. Mm-hmm. You're out 3 weeks after Infinity War, arguably the greatest comic book movie ever made. You're 1 week after Deadpool 2. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people just don't have that much disposable income to go to see 3 movies in 1 month.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I know. Yeah.
I mean, I went opening night. You couldn't. I know you were working. So, but you end up going. I don't even know when you went. You went a week later or so, didn't you?
I went once with you.
Yeah. That was like a week later, I think, wasn't it?
Was it a week later?
Wasn't it?
Maybe it was. It wasn't. I don't know. I'm so behind on movies. Yeah. I felt like that one, but. Yeah, I probably didn't fall as far behind on that one as I have on some of the other ones.
Or maybe we went.
But I know I know everyone I was around kept wanting to tell stories about it. I was like, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
So I felt like I gotta go see this just so everybody could talk.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I believe that people. I believe that people were, had spent their money on Infinity War, because Infinity War, obviously, people were going 2-3 times 4 times to see that movie. I mean, you could tell with how much money it made. I mean, movies don't make that much money unless people are going like 5, 6, 7 times.
Right.
So, with Deadpool making pretty good money the first weekend, it's like, I think people went it did well the first night, but then I think once people started reading reviews or reading the hate, they just got turned off. But I kept seeing on Twitter people seeing it like weeks later for the first time, and they're like, "Gosh, this is great! What are people complaining about? This is a good movie. It's a great Star Wars." And no. So, anyway, I was happy with it. Here's the thing, which is weird. Now that I'm reading this novel, that it's funny because I kind of feel like, look, I did like Solo. I did like it a lot. In fact, I liked it better than The Last Jedi. But now that I'm listening to this novel, I'm almost feeling like, well, you know what? I kind of would have been okay with just the novel, with this the story of Han. Because like you said, being on board with a new Han Solo was a little challenging at first. But seeing it in a book form or even a comic form, you could have gotten the likeness of Harrison still. And you could have gotten his history in canon without actually doing a movie about it. I don't know.
True.
Look, I'm glad I got the movie, but the book would have been enough for me, probably.
Interesting.
So, Thrawn Alliances, which is another book that came out. I finished that obviously right before I did Solo. I won't spoil that, but overall the book was really good. I have a hard time putting it in front of the first Thrawn book because that was really good. I mean, the best things about Thrawn Alliances was that it's bouncing back and forth between the present time, which is during Rebels, and then the past, which is during the Clone Wars, because Anakin runs into Thrawn back in the Clone Wars, which was pretty cool. And then there was Padme, and the best part too is a lot of it takes place on Batuu, which is the place that Star Wars Land is based off of. That's going to be in Disney. So it was pretty neat seeing all that. And the storyline was pretty cool. So, I mean, it was good, but I really liked the first book also. So it's probably about the same, it's on par with each other. So I definitely encourage it. And I encourage the audiobook. Mark Thompson reads that. He does Thrawn. I mean, sounds like the dang TV show. I mean, it's... his voice is incredible. I don't know how he does it.
Reading the comic, I put Thrawn's voice in my head.
Yes, and I'm glad that he was out in Rebels first, because you do get his voice, and then now I'm hearing it in the books. It's like it's the same thing, and but it's funny because I don't know how you feel about it, but it's like when he started talking to Rebels, it's like, well, yeah, that's how he would talk.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know, did they... I mean, I'm sure they did. Did they do audiobooks of the old Thrawn trilogy? I think they did.
The first one I heard of was the one you told me about.
Yeah, I'm curious if they did the old Thrawn trilogy in audio, and then I wonder if he's got a voice in that. I think they went back and maybe did those, but I don't know. That's actually curious about that. No, the book. Yeah, the book's really good. Again, I wouldn't put it really ahead of that one. I put them pretty close to each other, so it's high on the novel list. It's pretty good. People need to get into those. I'm assuming Timothy Zahn's got a third book in mind because he did the original Thrawn trilogy. Why don't we need to do another one?
Right. Well, he's a very interesting character just from that 6 issues that I read of the comic.
Yeah, so what did you think of that? What did you think of that?
I thought it was really good. I really got into the first couple issues, and then I kind of fell off, and I kind of jumped back on and read them all in one big chunk. And just his ability for, I mean, he has that Vader-esque thing going on, especially with the Darth Vader comic right now, because he is always thinking of 5 different things in his head at the same time.
Yes.
You know, it's like he's got a military strategy, but then he'll turn around and, you know, he's thinking about his homeland or, you know, how he's going to preserve himself in this situation and what's the best course, not only for what looks like the Empire, but then, you know, for himself as well and the people around him. So he's just he's a fascinating character because much like the Darth Vader comic that's going on right now as well, Darth Vader is just more cunning than I've ever seen him in any kind of storyline.
Yeah.
And just how vicious he is.
Right.
At this point. You know, I mean, I've always known him as like a bad guy, but I mean, he literally kills anything. If he just thinks you even mildly did something wrong.
Yeah.
So outside of that, like, but he's very complex as well. He's, you know, again, he's figuring out his dealing with the Force and getting rid of the Jedi, what's his next move and who he's going to go after. And I mean, there's all kinds of, I mean, he's got all these other plans going on along with just him, this one little task he's got. And it's the same way with Thrawn. You never know. The more he talks to people, the different people he deals with, he always reveals something different to them about what his mission is. But I like the fact that he was more of a military strategist and not really a politician. And seeing, what's her name? Governor, who's the girl? Yeah, seeing Governor Price kind of backstory come into play and how they kind of interact leading up to
Rebels.
Going into Rebels.
Yes.
You know, it's really kind of cool. It's like, oh, that's who that is. And, you know, this is why she's doing what she's doing. They're both, and she, you know, she's better at politics than he is at politics. So she's like really goes hand in hand with what he wants to accomplish. So that even made more sense to me coming from watching all of Rebels.
Right.
Because when I was watching Rebels, I was like, okay, she's important to the cause, but what's her real motivation? I never knew what it really was. And so I read this whole series. I'm like, oh, okay. So she's trying to do the right thing by herself, her family, but then, you know, still be part of the Empire. You know, it's just a whole very layered characters, and how it all worked out. But I really liked the 6 issues that came out, and just it revealed a lot about the characters and makes it even more interesting to go back and even watch Rebels now, because knowing this backstory of them and how they got to where they are, everything makes a lot more sense. You know, because when you see them initially, you don't know who those characters are. They're just, you know, part of the Empire. But now and unlike Vader, which to me, you know, it kind of defeats the whole idea of when I first saw him, you know, he was very villainous, but we went back and saw his whole backstory. So do you have a different appreciation for the character? I don't want to have sympathy for him because he's a bad guy. You want to know how he got that way. But I don't know with Thrawn, because I've only seen Rebels, and there's only a short little story that tells his backstory. It's not like a long, drawn out, like we have to go back through all these different things. But I don't know. If it did give more resonance to the characters now that I've seen them, and you know why they're doing what they're doing.
Right.
So yeah, it gave me a better appreciation of not only the comic but the actual, you know, the series as well. So.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of these stories do. They, especially the ones that come out before something you've seen already, it does change the perspective a little bit, because, you know, like with Thrawn Alliances, the present day part of Thrawn Alliances takes place between seasons 3 and 4 of Rebels. So it's after his failure with catching the Rebels on can't remember the base, the one with the Bendu on there. You know what I'm talking about? When they escaped there. I can't remember. Yeah. You know, Vader, it's hanging over Thrawn. You know, that in the eyes of Emperor and Vader, that Thrawn failed at, you know, at killing that cell, that rebel cell, which is our Kanan and those guys. So it's really neat dynamic that's happening with them based on what happened with that failure, and you know, so leading into season 4, when Thrawn finally comes back, it's like he's got this tension that's built up with Vader and the Emperor keep pointing out that, you know, you didn't do this and you didn't do this and you couldn't do this, and it's a cool perspective on, you know, like you said, when I go back and watch season 3 and 4 again, I'll have that knowledge now.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. It makes a big difference.
It does,
especially in that because they're all new characters to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so getting to know anything about them, you know, outside of a, you know, not a throwaway episode, but, you know, a flashback episode for one character, you know, or something. It's yeah.
So did Solo on that topic? Did Solo change your perspective of any of those characters in the original trilogy? Because I'll tell you one thing, because I'd love to get your opinion on this, because I was listening to another Star Wars podcast, and they brought up the fact some of them brought up the fact that they felt like Han at the end of the movie, when he gave the coaxium to Enfys Nest and he didn't join the rebellion or per se, that the fact that he even gave her the coaxium was kind of like him being a good guy, which went against what he is apparently at the beginning of episode 4.
Right.
So I don't know if I don't think I agree with that, but I don't, you know, it was interesting to hear. So I don't know if that, you know, did that do anything? Did his actions in Solo change your perception of him in the original trilogy?
Honestly, no, not really. Because I guess it's okay with me. I mean, I can see what people are saying. It makes him look like a good guy. And he wouldn't do anything really for anyone else without him having some sort of, you know, kickback if it doesn't do something for him, type thing. But, you know, we've known Han for so long. We've seen him in so many movies. And we've already seen his character go from, you know, selfish smuggler to, you know, wanting to help the rebellion and falling in love and all that kind of stuff. So I guess that's kind of embedded in the character already for me.
Yeah.
So when he does it in a prequel, when I guess technically he's not supposed to, it didn't really, you know, I didn't really view it as like, oh, that's just. I mean, I did kind of view it as it's out of character for Han, but I mean, you've already seen him grow, so I guess I kind of didn't put too much stock into that, you know?
Right.
Like, I know he wasn't technically supposed to do that, but I'm like, I know the character. He's going to try to be a good guy anyway. Maybe you're going to see that stuff anyway, you know, at some point or another, even though you're not supposed to see it until, you know, the end of episode 4.
Right.
Again, it's already kind of been embedded in that character to me, so I can forgive a timeline thing where he might not do something at that point, given my perspective of how, you know, when I saw him in the movies. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I didn't find it like an egregious thing. I mean, he ended up, you know, killing Beckett at the end anyway.
Yes.
You know, he shot first. It's kind of sealed. He still has that kind of mentality. So no, it didn't bother me.
Yeah, I mean, my argument to that right away would be there's 10 years still. We don't know what happens in that 10 years that could, you know, harden him or change him. Mm-hmm. I mean, just because he ends this movie, it doesn't lead into episode 4. There's still 10 years of life that he has that, you know, I mean, we don't know what happens with Kira, you know, in that 10 years. Maybe he, you know, maybe something happens and he gets angry about it and he just starts, you know, whatever. I mean, there's several things that could happen. So that, to me, that argument is tough to swallow because it's like, you know, it's one thing if, you know, how Rogue One butts right up against episode 4. There's no time to develop in that. But there's still 10 years. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can buy that too.
A lot can go on in those 10 years that can change him. Even though he's not, again, in 4, he's out on his own, but he's not he's not a criminal in a sense. He's a smuggler. You know, he's just, he's looking for money, you know, and I mean, he saves the princess, even though I guess he thinks he's going to get a reward, but you know, who knows?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's already been for me. It was fine. I didn't really put too much. Like I said, I put too much stock into that.
Yeah, it didn't change. Yeah, again, too far of a gap for me. It didn't change my thoughts on Lando or Han or Chewie. I mean, Chewie, I feel like Chewie's the same character. I mean, he's always loyal.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of separate. It may sound cliche, but I can kind of separate the two. Like, I don't try to. I didn't try to put Harrison Ford in Solo. I knew what it was, so I just took it for what it was, and let's just see where it goes.
Yeah.
So I think if you can do that without trying to, fit these ideas or these characters in these little boxes that have to meet these certain standards for a movie to be enjoyable.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's enough on the novels. Just some real quick news here. So they are. There was an article that came out over the weekend. They announced so we just talked about Galaxy's Edge, which is the Star Wars land at Disneyland and Disney World. Now it had been revealed that the whole area is called Black Spire Outpost, which is on the planet Batuu, which is in Thrawn Alliances. It's in
the Thrawn books.
Yes.
Book as well. I just read.
Wait, it's in the first book too?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I knew that.
Issue number. Let's see right now.
Wait, he goes where? He goes to Batuu, or Black Spire or something like that. I can't remember. I don't know if I'm.
And Thrawn, and then issue number 6, which is the finale. It starts on. Gosh darn it. Baton outside Creek Path.
Creek Path. What is that a city?
It just says Baton,
Batuu?
or Batonn.
Oh, that's different. So that's different.
Okay.
Batuu is Batuu.
Okay, no.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I was gonna be like, wow, I totally missed that. I mean, I did. That book came out. That book came out last year, I think. Yeah. So it's been a while since I read that first book.
Sorry, sometimes I skim over these like descriptions of what.
No, yeah.
And stuff.
So Batuu is the city, is the planet. Black Spire Outpost is the city, which is what the Disney World Disney Star Wars Land is going to be about. But anyway, they revealed over the weekend one of the names of the cantina that you're going to be able to visit there. Mm-hmm. It's called Oga's Cantina. So they released some kind of renderings of it, but it's basically described as this on the Disney Sparks blog. Officially, they gave us official details on what should be what should be a wretched hive of scum and villainy. Visitors come to this notorious local watering hole to unwind, conduct shady business, and maybe even encounter a friend or a foe. Run by intriguing alien proprietor Oga Gara, the cantina adheres to a strict code of conduct that tries to keep its unruly patrons in check. But with a history of being a smuggler's safe haven and a popular stopping point for those seeking to avoid authorities, you can bet that the cantina has a story or two to tell. So, and then it goes on to quote, "We are developing a specialty cocktail, non-alcoholic and alcoholic-based menu that will include creative-themed custom cocktails and proprietary beer and wine options." So it is a full-blown Star Wars cantina.
Nice. Yeah, I think I read that that's the first place that will actually serve any kind of alcohol.
Yes.
In Disney Park.
That's exactly right. Yep.
There you go.
Yeah. So the dining plan this year includes now so normally a Disney dining plan, if you get the medium grade, which is what we get, you get a snack, or I think you get 2 snacks. You get a quick serve, which is like a over the counter lunch, and then a dining, which is a sit down in your normal Disney package every day, right? Well, they added 1 alcoholic drink to it now, to the dining plan. So when you're eating dinner, you can have a drink. So because some of these places are popping up to where they're serving alcohol now, and obviously, yes, you're right. This will be a alcoholic cantina, which is killer. I mean, this
makes sense.
I cannot wait. Yeah, totally. I cannot wait for that. Let's see, real quick. Well, I mean, the only other news to talk about is Star Wars is getting a little bit of a showing at New York Comic Con coming up. New York Comic Con is October 4th through the 7th. That's one I wouldn't mind going to, checking out.
Yeah, I'd like to check that one out too.
Now, I don't know where they hold the Comic Con, New York Comic Con. Where do they do that at?
Gosh.
Is it a convention? I'm assuming
there's
convention center up there.
There's a convention center there they use. I'm blanking on it right now. Yeah, it's just like they have it's a smaller convention center than San Diego, obviously. But,
right.
I can't remember the name.
Yeah, because I always envisioned New York Comic Con would be massive, but I don't think it's that massive. It's
a lot of people go to it now, though.
Yeah,
it's not quite as big as San Diego because San Diego just happened.
Yes.
And you got a bunch that are going on right now. Dragon Con just wrapped up in Atlanta, so they're kind of like the last on the when
last
cons start happening. So
yeah.
It's probably pretty expensive to go to one of those two.
Yeah, New York.
So.
Yeah, you're right. So a couple of things that's happening there on Star Wars front is there's a Disney Publishing panel, what's new and upcoming from Disney Publishing. So you've got several writers and everything showing up on that. You've got Star Wars Women of the Galaxy, which is a novel, or not a novel, it's a book coming out from Amy Ratliff that's celebrating all of the female characters from Star Wars. You got Disney Lucasfilm Publishing. You've got So You Want to Be a Jedi panel. You got several different little panels. Hasbro's holding a panel. So several different panels. It doesn't look like there's anything going on with Resistance. Resistance is debuting that week, actually, that next week.
Oh, really? They should have something there then.
They probably will, but it doesn't look like there's a panel or anything that says anything on Resistance. So there are a ton of people that are obviously going to be there for signings. Steve Bloom, looks like Delilah S. Dawson, the author. R.A. Salvatore, Charles Soule, Chuck Wendig. You got it doesn't list them for some reason, but it says actor, the Clone Wars actor, the Star Wars Rebels. So it doesn't list the actual person. So maybe they're not revealing him yet, but they'll definitely have some people there. I'm sorry, that's their. I'm dumb. It's next Steve Bloom, and then it has a space, and it says actor Star Wars Rebels. So that's who it is. So Steve Bloom is there from Star Wars Rebels. You've got Phil Lamar from the Clone Wars. I'm not sure who that is.
He used to be on back in the day. Was it Mad TV?
Oh, really?
For a little while, I think maybe.
I don't know who he was in
Living Color. I don't remember. He was in one of those Fox shows.
Oh, okay.
And then he does a lot of voiceovers. He does a lot of voiceovers for Family Guy and Futurama.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Oh, this actually I didn't notice, but newly casted Matt Smith from episode 9, who is one of the Doctor Who's, right? He is there. He will be there. Of course, Charles Soule, writer of currently Darth Vader. And is he still writing Poe?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think he's writing Poe still.
I think he is too. I got them all backed up here.
So, yeah, if you're around New York, October 4th through the 7th, go check that out. New York Comic Con.
Yeah, Charles Soule's still on Poe Dameron.
Yeah, which is coming to a close here soon, I think, right?
Yeah, they're at issue. I'm behind, but they are at issue 30.
Well, then I think 31 is the last one.
30, yeah.
Okay, so there's that's all the kind of a little bit of news. So let's talk about these comics a little bit because now since those of you that aren't familiar with all the comics that have come out, very similar to the novels, they've been pumping out a lot of comics since the story group has been in charge here and making sure all this stuff stays together in one canon. Now, just a little bit of history, Russ. What besides Star Wars, what are you like? What are you reading right now, or what are you into right now as far as books?
Outside of all the Star Wars books, I'm in. You know me, I'm into pretty much everything.
Yeah.
I'm still big on DC. Still big on Batman and Action Comics and Detective Comics and the new Justice League Dark just came out with a new series. Superman, they got Brian Michael Bendis, who used to write at Marvel for a long time. He now came over to DC and he's writing his own Superman story. Mm-hmm. And they're about to come out with called DC Black Label. Black Label, where they're doing kind of like these one-off stories about characters that you wouldn't see in normal continuity.
It's non-continuity, right?
No, generally it's not. It's kind of like even when The Dark Knight Returns, that first book, first graphic novel that came out that blew everybody's minds, from Frank Miller. Batman was in the 60s. He retired for a long time, so it was kind of its own story.
Yeah.
Still the same characters, but you can do darker and more long form story type telling on these type of labels. And because the one they had for Batman, which was great, called White Knight.
Yeah.
They should make a movie just out of that, because it's a completely different take on Batman, the Joker, and their relationship, and Harley Quinn, and it's just a really well done story. But as far as I'm reading all the Marvels. I'm reading Star Wars, Darth Vader, Dr. Aphra, Poe, Thrawn. The only thing I'm not reading is kind of the adaptations for the movie. Those don't do a lot for me. I haven't caught up on the Lando series, but again, I just said that they did a kind of it's supposed to be, it says, issue number 1, but at the end of it, it says, follow the story in Solo number 1. So they're coming out with their own Solo, a Star Wars story number 1 adaptation from the movie. So this is kind of a prequel to them meeting up with Han. Again, it's just Rios and Val and him, and they're doing, pulling their con jobs on their people. So that was a cool little one-off. But I got a lot of Image books. I got a lot of Marvel books that I haven't. Again, I'm kind of behind on a lot of these, but Marvel came out with a new version of the or a new take on the Fantastic Four.
Yeah,
there's a lot of. I'm reading pretty much everything. Captain Marvel. Again, there's a couple of Independence or Vertigo books from DC that are, more of adult themed, that are really good. But yeah, I'm reading pretty much everything. I got to believe it or not, I've still got only 3 more issues. I'll still be up to date on The Walking Dead.
Yes, I've been keeping up with that one. Yeah,
I don't know why I do, but I do.
I know. I almost feel obligated to read it.
After 183 issues, you're kind of like, well,
I know.
I've read them all so far. So
yeah, I know. That's where I'm at too. I might as well keep
going. How you gonna stop? So,
so big history of comics from Russ. So of all of the Star Wars ones that you've read here, which ones stand out mostly to you?
Probably, Darth Vader has been just constantly a great story, a great take on Darth Vader. Again, from writer Charles Soule, and I'm just so intrigued by. He's kind of going on these little these missions with his Inquisitors, hunting down Jedis for a couple of issues, and you see how unbelievably ruthless and you can't read this comic and feel any kind of sympathy for Darth Vader. He comes off a worse person than you could even imagine. He's like, God, he is just so evil at this point. Again, this is much further before he ever gets near redemption, but still, it's just like his cruelty and his just single-mindedness as far as how to take care of problems is astounding, and it's been a great read from the beginning. I mean, both Star Wars and Dr. Aphra, it's kind of polar opposites. Star Wars is still Star Wars. You still have Han, you have Leia, Luke, 3PO, and so you're still kind of in that world. And what they're, the only thing with this book is that now there's, I still have a little bit of a problem when it first started. It was always they're breaking the characters off. Luke and Leia were off by themselves for a while. Han was
Right.
off by himself for a while. It's kind of like these individual stories, but I liked it better when they brought all the characters back for a reason, a mission, or, hitting some, mark they need to hit.
Right.
So I liked it when they did that. And right now it's just a lot of espionage, a lot of politics, a lot of double crossing, and just it's kind of a unique take on these characters and how they're dealing with people that they thought were their friends, or people who were jumping ship and coming to their side. There's a lot of that going on in both Star Wars and Dr. Aphra. I mean, even though her story really isn't connected kind of as a beeline into the Star Wars universe, she's kind of off on her own. She's off on really weird adventures. She's a very Han Solo. She's like she would be the Han Solo that never did care about people.
Right.
Never kind of grew. That's where Dr. Aphra is. She just out for herself no matter what. And because again, it's kind of out of the mainstream of Star Wars. It's just unique. Her only real through line is Darth Vader at this point. And she's just kind of running from him, but they're starting to tie the storylines up again. But Dr. Aphra is just a kind of her own character, really, just set in the Star Wars universe, because it doesn't tie. But it's a good read. The Thrawn adaptation was great, and Poe I've always been kind of hit or miss on. It's been good for the most part, but now again I'm probably 5 issues behind, and the last issue I read, he had just separated from Lord Santeca, prior to the beginning of
Force Awakens, right?
Force Awakens. So I was kind of there, so I'm interested to see where it goes, because he's been dealing with, again, different characters from the Star Wars universe that most people wouldn't know about. Not in the movies. The collective Star Wars masses who understand read novels, stuff like that, know who most of these characters are, but they're not very typical characters you're used to seeing. So you kind of have to learn who they are and what their interaction is going to be with this. So, but it's been they've all been really good and entertaining. I think the only one I think I maybe told you about, and I even maybe wrote a review on it, was the DJ Most Wanted issue.
Yes,
that was really disappointing.
I
was kind of like, that doesn't really. It didn't really do much for me. It's kind of. And not that it had to, again, it didn't necessarily have to tie. It didn't have to have a point A to point B into the Star Wars universe.
but it could have.
It could have. Yeah,
could have
most
made
definitely.
him more important somehow.
Absolutely.
In the Last Jedi,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely does not advance his character.
No.
You don't get any kind of backstory that you sympathize with him. You don't understand what his motivations are still, because he doesn't really do anything.
No. He just steals. And
yeah, so it's kind of a one-note character.
Yes. And it looks like looks like that's it. Like The Last Jedi was it. We're not going to see him ever again. We're not going it was a really weird charger that just kind
It was a very weird character.
And
I always thought he had potential as far as like characters. Like always, this is going to be a new twist, but
and why would you hire
really didn't go anywhere.
someone like Benicio del Toro, to
right, exactly. That's what I thought too. Get the guy named with that big, he's going to be, an important character.
Yes. I was watching The Last Jedi over the I think I was watching it Sunday night, and I was actually thinking. I was kind of thought about that. Like I thought the comic didn't do anything for me for DJ, and then and he's still watching it. I'm like, so the guy with the lapel, with the red lapel that they were supposed to get. Like I was thinking, man, I really actually want to know more about him. Like,
right?
Like how interesting would it have been if he actually was the guy that they got and broke? I don't know. I just felt like that story might have been better.
Yeah,
anyway.
It might have been.
Yeah, because that was disappointing to that comic. But okay, so Vader, Aphra are kind of your
Part of I mean, out of all the ones that come, every month, yeah, they'd be. If I had them all sitting here, I'd probably read Vader, Aphra, Star Wars.
Yeah.
Get caught back on Poe, and then if any other, because they keep coming out with. Again, I don't really read the movie adaptations because I've seen the movie.
Yeah.
It just kind of shortens everything. It doesn't really add much to it. It's it's a cool take on the movie itself, but
yeah.
It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird because I've always complained how I don't like how big superhero movies are today, only because they changed the look of the characters in the comic books. They try to make the characters look like the people you've seen in the movies. And I'm always like, just don't do that, because these characters already have a history. They already have a look. They have their own, different artists draw them all the time. So they don't have a consistent look of an actor, But with Beckett, that just came out, I think it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I've already seen the movie. So when you get a comic that's a prequel to that, you have to have them drawn as those actors. Yes. It just kind of draws me out a little bit, I mean, because all these characters you don't know any of them except for Beckett and Val and Rios is the only one you know. So if they didn't have that identity and just somebody was just drawing them, you might get lost on the page, where are they? I was even thinking about that as I was reading, because I'm like, they're drawing him to look just like Woody Harrelson, but that's who he is now. I've already seen him in the movie. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of going. It just kind of goes backwards. If you see a character first on screen and they don't have any kind of comic book or voice, and to go with it, then it always makes it a little different than characters that have been established for a while in comics and in print. So anybody could play them, and it doesn't change how I want to see them in the comic book itself.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm not a comic book reader. Hypothetically, I'm not a comic book reader. I'm listening to our show right now, hearing us talk about comics. What would you say to those listeners out there that are thinking about reading the books, the Star Wars books, because they just felt like they haven't been interested? I mean, basically, talk about what you think is or are they important? What is the importance of these stories in relation to, all the other mediums that are coming out, movies, TV? I mean, do you think these stories, how much of these stories really are lending itself into the Star Wars canon, do you think?
For me, they add a lot to canon, and they add a lot to the characters themselves. The one thing that you don't have a lot of time to do in a movie is develop for example, Darth Vader, depends on where you start in his story. Mm-hmm. In this particular version, it starts right as soon as he breaks out of his shackles, and realizes Padme's dead. Right. It starts right there, and you kind of follow his character. This would be a super long movie if you followed him, getting how he gets his first lightsaber, why it's red, all these kind of little things, and seeing Vader fail against people and learn how to use his body. That would be a pretty boring movie because it takes so long.
Although I'd watch it.
Yeah, you would, but I mean, with the comic though, it's there are several issues that were done early on in the series that had very little dialogue to it. Didn't have any kind of exposition, and didn't have any actual dialogue back and forth between the characters. It was just Vader by himself, and it was how it was drawn. and how it was, the action was still portrayed through just panels and pictures. That was just amazing to me because you don't see a lot of that.
Right.
Especially not especially with a writer like Charles Soule, but he's such a good writer. You expect him to write a lot on the page, but he kind of let some of this breathe a little bit. And I think that, and for me, again, I don't feel sympathy for Vader when once he gets his lightsaber. I'm not like, I'm cheering the bad guy. He just keeps becoming a worse person, and but you see him beyond the movies. And if you only watch the movies, especially for Vader, you only get that slim window into who his character is.
Right.
But the comics give you a lot of backstory, like how he kind of, what the Force is like in his mind when he's in his chamber. Like, you've never seen that, and he goes through a lot of struggles in that. His octagon where he sits, and his helmet. It's just, there's a lot going on in there, and I don't think it would project well in a TV show or a movie. It works better in a comic because you can visually see just the weirdness of what could actually be happening. But it just added a lot to Vader's character to me. The Star Wars one, again, I think there was so many little mini stories going on. I don't think it led much to the canon. But you do get crossover from these characters with Jyn Erso and all those characters from Rogue One that they kind of double back after the planet's been is half destroyed, and they're trying to get people off of the planet and still preserve it somehow. So there's a lot of story there that you're never going to see in a movie. You're never going to get a chance to. I think even the Captain Phasma miniseries that came out, like, that revealed a lot about that character I'm definitely never going to see in the movies.
Yeah.
And it made her a more fascinating character instead of the one note that she became in the movies. I learned more about, like, her and her culture and where she came from and why she has a motivation for doing what she's doing. She's about self-preservation, so you get a little bit more depth. So the comics for me, the Thrawn one, I know that was based on a novel, but again, this really brought that character to a much higher level in my kind of enjoyment of the stories. Like, I'll go back and watch Rebels with a different perspective now.
Yeah.
Knowing who he is now and where he came from, and I can even get more layers to the show itself. No matter what he's doing, I can always think about the other things he's done. Like, well, maybe he's got a secondary motive for saying that. So most of the books, again, outside of the adaptations of the actual movies themselves, for the most part, the comics, much like the novels, just give you a shorter and a little more visual picture of, kind of these longer stories that can take place, between other characters, and there's a lot of crossover. So you get to see a lot of things you won't get to see in the movies, and maybe you will someday, but for right now, this is just an easier way to tell that story. Mm-hmm. So I never read any of the expanding universe, but this is the first time I've kind of delved into other forms of Star Wars outside of the movies, the TV shows and the comics and, the novels. And, I'm getting more into that side of things because I know it all ties into the same storyline. It's not branching off into, different arms of the universe that maybe I care about, maybe I don't. These all still kind of tie into, and some very loosely, but they still tie into what we all have, know and love about the actual movies. Mm-hmm. So for me, they add a lot, and I really enjoy learning more about characters, especially if they're done well. Like I say, outside of DJ Most Wanted, that was the one book that really, again, much like you, didn't do anything for me. It didn't tell me any more about the character. It didn't give me any reason to like him or dislike him anymore. Whereas, like, even the Star Wars, even the Vader book, that gives me a lot more reason to hate Vader.
Yes.
As a bad guy, you're like, God, you were just so freaking evil right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you're never going to snap out of it. So what we see him, from being a little kid to becoming Vader, you have a lot of sympathy for him. And at the end of, the original trilogies, you have sympathy for him because he's redeeming himself. But this is like just pure evil Vader. There's no glimpse of any kind of sympathy or hope or happiness or optimism. It's just all, I'm burning it all down, basically. So it's kind of fun to like just be in that character's headspace for that time, and not worry about how his arc's going to end. 'Cause I don't know how it's going to end here. It's a different story, just hunting down Jedis. But now that he's hunting them all down, he's like, the Inquisitor's like, well, Vader's not going to stop. Right. Who's he going to go after next? So it's not like, okay, we got rid of the Jedi, we can just lay low. It's like, no, who's my next victim? So it just really shows him being the worst he could possibly be. So I like being in that character like that.
Yeah, and it's cool because you look back at 1977 when the original movie came out. I mean, that's exactly what Obi-Wan said he did. Was he helped the Empire hunt down the Jedi Knights? I mean, that's what he's doing. So, I think the comics, like the novels, which is weird. Like I've read almost every novel, not every novel. I would say every adult novel and most of the young adult novels I've done, because you have your young adults, which are like Ahsoka and Leia and Lost Stars, Most Wanted. I've done those, and I've done all the adult novels, and I've even done some of the movie adaptations. I didn't do Rogue One, but I did Force Awakens. I did Last Jedi, and now I'm doing Solo. Anyway, I think like the comics, because feel like you've read more comics, I've read more novels. As a Star Wars fan, I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody that every story is fantastic, because it's not. There's definitely some novels that I will never go back and read again. That it took me a while to get through because it was just not that good. And I've said it on the show. I'll even flat out say it right now. Like Heir to the Jedi, which was one of the first novels that came out. Like I wasn't a big fan of that. A New Dawn, actually, I wasn't really that big fan of the first one that came out with Hera and Kanan. Their introduction.
Yeah.
What other? Those were kind of to my mind. I mean, Last Shot, which came out before, I wasn't actually a big fan of that one that much. Canto Bight was really bad. So anyway, but you've got the Aftermath trilogy, you've got Thrawn, you've got Bloodline, you've got Dark Disciple. Those books are incredible. Catalyst was incredible. So I'm sure, like you said, like comics, there's definitely some comics that probably, like, I'm looking at the whole series here of comics that have been released. Like, the Chewbacca series wasn't really good.
Yeah, that was. Reading Chewbacca talk is very hard to do.
Very hard. The 3PO one shot wasn't that good either. With the red arm. Like you said, DJ wasn't all that. Unfortunately, like, I love Mace Windu, but his series wasn't all that great.
No, it wasn't. Yeah, that wasn't that great.
Yeah, so you're gonna have hitter, but like you said, Vader, incredible. The Han Solo one was really good, I thought. Vader Down, that whole series was good.
Vader Down was great.
The original Lando, the first one, when he's on Emperor's ship, was fantastic. Darth Maul has been really good. So, you're gonna find. So that's what I would say too to fans is like, if you don't want to read it all and experience it and have an opinion about it, then just really focus on maybe some of the characters that you do enjoy and just do those, because they do expand your thought process on and change your viewpoints. That are when those characters are extended into other mediums, movies, TV shows. like Rebel Rising, which is a young adult novel about Jyn Erso. It's basically her whole life. Like, that book is really good, and you really understand why she is how she is in the beginning of Rogue One. I mean, totally. Because in the beginning of Rogue One, she's just this woman that seems like she's in prison because she's leading a bad life, but you don't know how she got into that life, why she got into that life necessarily. Because, you jump from when she first goes with Saul all the way to when she's in prison. So there's a whole thing. And Saul Guerrero is just such a complex character. From his experience from Clone Wars all the way through the Alliance. So anyway, so yeah, I think just the message is that these, I'm with you. I never read that much. I read a couple expanding universe books. I read the Thrawn trilogy. I read the Han Solo trilogy. I read Empire, Shadows of the Empire, but I didn't get. That's really my extent. I didn't really get beyond like the New Jedi Order and stuff like that Casey did. I never got into that. But I knew back then those stories weren't really connected. I mean they were in that universe a little bit, but George never considered them canon. Now that they are, it's like, I don't know. It's canon for a reason. They're trying to expand these characters. They're telling, like you said, these more in-depth stories with these characters because they can't do it in a movie. It would cost hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So, but real quick, Russ, though, how in books, novels, and all this stuff, comics, how do I say this? Like, how significant can you get with a character though in those mediums? If not everybody is into them, you know what I'm saying? Like can a major character like die in a comic book, or can something so dramatically that changes a character's personality be done in a movie or in a book like that?
Probably not. I don't think you'd kill off Vader in a comic book.
Well,
I think you. Afra, you might.
A major character. I mean, I guess kind of. I mean, not many people know about her, but
now, I mean, if her series ended with Vader killing her, I mean, I could see that happening because, again, she hasn't been in any movies, so she's kind of a standalone character. And they're even like, Commander Terex in the Poe Dameron series. I mean, he's a character within that series that becomes a very major character. I mean, he's in the middle, from the middle almost to the where we are now. He's a major thorn in Black Squadron's side.
Yeah.
So if he died, like for me, it would be a major character. But again, outside of the people who watch the movies, probably
Well,
they're not
okay,
gonna know who he is or.
Well, so let me throw out one example then. Chewbacca died in the expanding universe.
Mm-hmm.
Could Chewbacca die in a comic book right now?
I doubt it.
Because I'm with you. I don't think so. I
don't think you could. No, I don't think you could do that. I don't think you could really do it to any of the, the key players.
Yeah.
From episode 4 on. I mean, if they've been around this long, you're definitely not going to kill them off in a comic book or even a novel.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to. I think the only way you can really do is if you establish a character within the confines of that medium, whether it be book or comic book, and they can be a major player because there are major players in Dr. Aphra who I don't think we'll ever see in a Star Wars movie.
Yes.
Or even referenced, So these are characters that I know, and if they died, it'd be a major death within the comic book. But, again, to people who aren't reading them or don't really care outside of the movies, it's you can't do that to the ones you see on screen every single, episode that comes out. I don't think you could do that.
Yeah.
It's a little restrictive. I mean, it's restrictive. Yeah, I'm with you. If you try to read everything, you're gonna come up against some stuff that doesn't hold water, doesn't measure up. But I'm like you. If you follow one, if it's a character that has their own series, and they really focus on that one character for more than like 6 issues, you might have something worth reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think. I think something. I think someone significant and popular that's been around that people know about. I think it's hard to. I think it'd be hard to kill them off in any of these mediums because I think because half the fandom wouldn't even know until they heard about it. Wait, what? Chewbacca died in a comic? I mean, that comic would fly off the shelf then. I think
it would,
but
yeah,
it's
Death of Superman.
Exactly. Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, Superman was an established book for a long time, but that was
that was huge. Oh my gosh, yeah, that was.
By today's standards, I don't think you could ever get away with it. Period, because the internet, somebody give it away.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, totally.
Before it ever actually got released.
Yeah, but spoilers. But like Dark Disciple, which I've talked about on here before, like that was the death of Asajj Ventress dies in that book.
Mm-hmm.
So even though she's a major character now, I would say,
right. Mm-hmm.
But that book was supposed to be Clone Wars episodes, so she would have died in the Clone Wars episodes if it had gone on, and they may still do that. I don't know. They may still make that as as the Clone Wars are coming back, they may turn that into a series again, part of the series. But that was, to me, that was a blow that I mean, again, it was part of the series, so it kind of made sense. But the fact that they did that with her, it was pretty cool. And then, I can't imagine any of those characters from Rebels, like Ezra, Ahsoka now, Sabine, any of those people like passing away in comics or books or anything like that. I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah, because you can do it in comics. You can do it in animated series though.
Yes. Yeah. Totally.
If anybody wants to talk about the whole Darth Maul thing, we can fill you in on that. If you haven't watched all Rebels yet,
that's exactly. Well, that's true. Oh yeah, actually, that's exactly.
That's a major character.
TV series. That is a major character. Yes.
That's few and far between. I mean,
yes. No, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Okay, so we can go on forever, but I think it's time to wrap this up. Real quick, last thing. What's your take on Resistance?
I think it's kind of like when Clone Wars first came out. I was kind of like, I think I gotta get used to this animation. So my initial take on the trailer again was just the animation was so different from what we've been watching in Clone Wars and Rebels. Even though Rebels is different from Clone Wars, it's still pretty close. But this is something completely outside of like what I'm expected out of a Star Wars animated series.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. It's just something different. And it's again a chance to get into the heads of some characters that we know about so far, but we don't know a ton about.
Yeah.
So I'm excited from the standpoint of, hopefully much like the comics, they'll kind of get in these characters and give me a new perspective for, the last 2 Star Wars movies that came out. Maybe I can look at those a little differently. So you never know. But I think all in all, it's definitely a different take for them. But I'm sure the storytelling's good, or at least different animation style. But I still think the stories will be good.
Yeah.
So if I'm excited about it, and I hope that everyone that's watched Rebels and or Clone Wars or both, they'd be just excited for it too.
Yeah.
I haven't heard any kind of negativity fallout from it being quote unquote more anime style, which there's a little bit of that, but everybody's got to categorize it as something.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I've heard is that people have been saying that they think it's too kid friendly, which doesn't make sense because Star Wars is, there's different levels of Star Wars, obviously. So it's like maybe this one is, more centered towards kids, but I think the same group is trying to make it for everybody as much as they can, so.
That's interesting because from just animation style.
Yeah.
I know the stories could be different. I mean, the stories could be more kid-friendly, but the animation style is totally less kid-friendly than Rebels or Clone Wars have been.
Yeah.
So and that's strictly animation style. Again, stories could be darker or more kid-friendly or whatever. But we'll have to wait and see. But I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. Yep, me too. Okay, so that's I think that debuts October 10th, if I'm correct. I might be wrong on that, but I think it's October 10th. Solo digital version comes out September 14th, which is just a week from Friday. You can get your hands on the digital copy 2 weeks later. It comes out on Blu-ray, so look for that. And that's all the upcoming stuff. We will be back next week. Casey should be back in the chair here with me next week as we talk more Star Wars. Thanks, Russ, for sitting in with me.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
Yes, we will get you more back on here. You, Cody, we got to just keep the lines open for everybody as we keep getting closer to episode 9. Of course, Celebration in April. Lots of stuff happening. We appreciate everybody listening. Go check us out, InsideTheForce.com. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Inside the Force. Russ over there is at Director421 on Twitter. Give him a follow. I'm DCottingham21. Hope everyone has a great rest of the week. He's Russell Johnson.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
No problem. I'm Dave Cottingham. May the Force be with you.
Thank you for listening to Inside the Force, a Star Wars podcast hosted by David Cottingham and Casey Cooney. For more shows, additional content, articles, and the latest Star Wars news, please visit InsideTheForce.com. Inside the Force. For the Force within all of us.